What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Movie Emporium flashback review, where I take movies from the past, break them down, and tell you what I think about them. Today, we of course are on the road to the Destiny of Dial, or the Dial Destiny, or whatever they decided to call the 50th Indiana Jones movie. As we know, this is the last movie starring Harrison Ford. It's going to be a pretty big movie. The reviews at Con were not very, yeah, as Chris is saying, they were kind of middling, but I'm looking forward to it. And the one thing I haven't done in my almost 5 years of reviewing is, of course, the Indiana Jones series. I've done the MCU. I'm currently doing Mission Impossible. Indiana Jones, for a lot of people, is seminal. It's one of the classics. It's one of the most not only revered, but one of the most used, like, for people and their experience, and seeing things in the theater. I've of course been able to see this in theater. I'm sure, Chris, you've been able to see this in theater.
Yep.
But we're gonna start out talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark. But before the review begins, Chris, of
Yes.
course, Movies and Munchies. You guys have probably heard of him. Thank you for coming on to talk about this seminal film. How you doing? How's everything going with you?
I'm doing great. This is awesome. I'm excited to talk about this. Raiders is like a favorite of mine, holds a special place in my heart. So yeah, this will be good.
And to start off, the funny thing about this movie is Superman 2. I think Superman 2 was it this. I was reading. I don't know if I read it right, but a huge film, a Superman style type film or something of that nature, was considered like the big movie of the summer. It was, the one that was projected to do all the money. And the thing, I don't know how you feel, how you like look at this, but Steven Spielberg at this point had done probably, I think, at least 2 or 3 huge, well-beloved movies like Jaws and Close Encounters and something else. Anyways, he's pretty much a well-known entity at this point. And this movie was not nobody cared. Okay, let's go back. They're the biggest movies of all time, as we're aware, outside like Jurassic Park, which was always anticipated, stuff like Titanic, stuff like Avatar, stuff like Back to the Future, Star Wars, all that stuff. For a fact, Chris, and this is true, none of them were seen as potential blockbusters or hits. None of them were seen as game changers. Star Wars is notoriously known for having huge production problems. Same thing with Jaws, and it was the same thing with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Nobody knew or cared or had any interest in seeing this because it was looked like another serial 50s action adventure movie. But going into a movie like this, it's kind of, as you're aware, it's kind of hard not to feel this movie, to be in this movie. And it's just I don't know, like, do you remember seeing this movie like as a reissue, or were you able to see it when it first came out? Like, what was your I'm not trying to like age you, but like, no. For instance, me, I wasn't able to see it. I think I may have seen this movie like at some point between the 80s and 90s, because I wasn't born until 82. But I'm always curious, like, when I talk to my family or talk to somebody that is older than me that I'm friends with, and and in general, like, what was the first time you actually saw this movie in the theater? Because it's pretty, I mean, it's been had many reissues at this point, but do you remember the first time you saw it?
I do, and the reason it holds a special place in my heart is because I'm pretty sure this is the first movie I saw in the theater. It's the first movie I really have a memory of seeing. After that, I remember seeing a couple other movies, from like my childhood, and I may have even seen like Empire in the theater, but I don't remember necessarily seeing that. So this is the one that I just like, yes. And I wasn't even 10 yet. But I just, went with my family and was sucked in to truly the adventure. This is, I think this kicks off like for everybody, probably, but just, I remember as a little boy who would like to get into the dirt and build forts and everything else. This was adventure. This was just, oh my gosh, he's swinging through, finding things, going through the jungles and all, which, okay, let's not talk about the spiders but just, the danger after danger, the traps and all of that. It's just, it sucks you in. And I think for like our generation, it began to define kind of like some of our interests, maybe. I mean, you have, because then you have like Goonies that come after this. You know, another adventure movie, and that actually is even more so like for us because it's kids at that point doing this. But yeah, this, I mean, yeah. So seeing it in theaters, I remember the boulder, you know, the small bits and pieces of it, and just be like, oh, and
it's as we've learned, it's amazing that this movie passes PG. Like the fact that it took like Red Dawn and Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom to get that PG-13 rating, because I don't know about you, but if I were like 6 years old watching this movie and seeing the people's melt faces, you might be a little scared. I mean, then again, my parents, one of the first films my parents took me to was, of course, The Black Cauldron. Oh. So you can imagine that. I always
that's
joke
a dark
with my friends,
movie.
Right? Yeah, that's why I always joke with my friends about that. I'm like, I think we as kids and young people saw the most effed up movies you can think of, because you know, you watch today, you have your, you know, MCUs and Transformers and all that stuff, and there are dark movies like Guardians 3, as we're aware, is a very dark movie and stuff like that, thanks to James Gunn. But it was just a different era, and what makes this movie unique is the talent behind it. It's a movie where, first of all, Harrison Ford coming off like a couple movies with, you know, American Graffiti, and then of course you got Star Wars, which, you know, he became a huge phenomenon with. But even with this movie was supposed to have Tom Selleck as Magnum PI as Indiana Jones. It's like having, you know, I can't think of a particular who are supposed to be
Eric in Back to the Future. What's his name?
Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz.
Yes.
Yeah. Or who's the guy who ended up was supposed to play Wolverine. It's like I love Tom Selleck. I think he's fantastic. You know, he's been great, but it's just like Harrison Ford is there's no perfect casting that could have come. It was just like lightning in a bottle. And you know, on top of that, you have George Lucas, who's just coming off the Empire Strikes Back, considered like, you know, it was not well received when it first came out. It was considered, you know, a fantastic film. But the thing that I read about and I've known about for a while is not only was George Lucas very into like the serials, similar to like Steven Spielberg, but he actually wrote, he conditioned the story, or he worked with the story with Philip Kaufman, who of course is well known for doing like All the Right Stuff and stuff like that. This guy's a very famous writer in his own right. He's like David Mamet or Robert Towne. And then they get somebody like Lawrence Kasdan, who I think had just done stuff like The Big Chill. I think that I think that's he had done that, or he was going to the Big Chill in that decade. But I just when you watch movies like this and you see the writing crew and you see, you know, Spielberg's a whole different beast, because Spielberg was already known at the time. It's amazing that movies turn out as well as they do and are subjected to critiquing and criticism from the Hollywood system, because you would never think a movie that is, you go to the MCU with the Russo brothers, you never think a movie that's written by Lawrence Kasdan, a story by Philip Kaufman, and George Lucas, you know, Star Wars, or what he had here and there, would create something so iconic. And that's not on top of just, you know, the crew involved, the cinematographer and John Williams score and stuff like that. And I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, as somebody who is, you know, also, you know, loves behind the scenes stuff with movies, like when you hear about like the creative forces, and this is a movie that had a lot of stakes behind it when it came to production, you know, cost, and it was still a troubled production because of the heat and stuff like that. I mean, what do you think about that going into, you know, let's say you have the opportunity to make this movie, and you know, you have all these forces behind it kind of pushing back? And
could you imagine the stress that they were under?
I mean,
it, you know, just if anytime you would have any type of setback, small or large, you know, all the producers are just seeing money go out, you know, just like, oh crap, you know. And I mean, the pressure then from the studio, and I can't even imagine what that would be like to try and just push forward. Even if you're Steven Spielberg, you know, that you're going from this, because this is that first movie, and you're in the 80s, you're telling a movie about the 30s, and you're bringing in Nazis, and is this going to be okay? Are people going to respond well to this? Is this going to be, you know, even, is it going to just be silly, or is it going to be, you know, way too dramatic? I mean, what is it? You don't know what that, I mean, it's a huge gamble. So
yeah. It's it boggles my mind. Like I watched this movie literally like right before we started recording, and it's a there's a joke that ran. I don't know if you watched The Big Bang Theory or you remember this joke, but there was an
Mhm.
episode where the guys from Big Bang Theory they had their wives and their girlfriends watch the movie, and one of them brought up, well, the movie doesn't work. The movie works whether Indiana Jones is in the movie or not, because literally everything that happens would have happened to begin with. So, like, if Indiana Jones was in the movie, Marion would have had she'd been killed, the thing would have been taken, and they would have taken the Ark of the Covenant to the location that they would have taken it in. But I think the problem with that logic is not the fact that they're not wrong. It's the simple fact that in order for a movie like this to work, in order for a action hero to have sense and sensibility when it comes to writing, you have to have somebody that can make the story entertaining. You have to have someone
Mhm.
who's very charismatic. And Harrison Ford's he's a grumpy old person. I mean, he's a
Oh,
person that's
totally.
always been, yeah, he's always been a person that's just, he's never been like one for the limelight and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
but the thing about him is, like a lot of the action stars even today, is just his charisma, how he bleeds into the screen, the fact that he is that gruff and tumble type of individual who can be punched in the face, who can take down Nazis, who can use a whip, who can be really sick and shoot a guy in the in the chest. It's all that stuff. And even I mean, Indiana Jones not being in the movie, it just doesn't make the movie interesting. It's like if you took Rod Sterling out of the Twilight Zone and just had episodes of the Twilight Zone, it just doesn't work because there's something missing in the piece of the
Absolutely.
puzzle. And yeah, so
Yeah, you can't. I mean, there's no point in the movie then, really. I mean, okay,
yeah,
so if you watch the bad guys grab something, then they go over and they figure it out and they get the thing that they're looking for and then they die. That's a
yeah.
terrible story. I don't what you, there's
Right,
no conflict in this, you know. So
right.
yeah, to have well, and I think with Harrison Ford too, that not only is he gruff and grumpy through so much of this, but then he has these looks of like genuine surprise at some points, or even like just he's totally disgruntled when something doesn't go his way, and I can't
Yeah,
tell if that's really him or or if that's acting, what's going on there, but it
yeah,
works.
yeah,
I mean, that's what makes his character so endearing, is
yeah,
because he's consistently just, I mean, he's excited like a kid, but he's
yeah,
fed up with everybody. Yeah, he's like, just get
yeah.
out of
He's
my way.
right. And it's also helped by the fact he has a fantastic supporting cast of people that have worked with George Lucas in the past, or have had some history in some form or fashion when it comes to TV making and movie making. Because
Mhm.
Paul Freeman, who plays the main bad guy, has been in a lot of stuff before this. I think Karen Allen was mostly unknown, if I remember right,
Mhm.
but she may have done some other stuff. I can't remember offhand. John Rhys-Davies, who of course would go on to Lord of the Rings. This of
Yeah.
course has Alfred Molina in it at the beginning.
Dude, that
Um,
blew me away when I
yeah,
rewatched it yesterday, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, wait a minute!" And I had to stop it for a second. Then I looked up
uh,
IMDb, and then I hit play again, and then he does he said something, and he had this look, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't even need to look that up. That was totally him," because it
yeah,
shined
right,
right through there,
right, right.
so unexpected.
It's also a movie that has William Hootkins in it, who is one of the curators at the beginning that
Mm.
recruits Indiana. Of course, played Porkins and Eckhart in the original Batman movie. It's that the best way to describe a movie that is considered iconic and classic is not only the script, which is, with the writer strike, shows you how important the script process
Mhm.
is, but you have to cast the right people. That's why
Oh, totally.
Star Wars works so well. That's why
Hmm.
the Dark Knight trilogy works so well. That's why Jaws works so well. It's just you have to have those cast of characters. And of course, like I said, you have to have a director who can lead all these people, because as we've seen, directors can ruin a movie,
Oh
but
yeah.
also, yeah, it's so it's amazing that throughout the years of directing, people who've directed, there's a few directors like Spielberg or Nolan who can literally see what they need on the screen. You can have a great director
Hmm.
like David O. Russell or something like that, but you get a Quentin Tarantino or Spielberg, and just like the shot compositions in this
Hmm.
movie, like the fact that he can put a camera on a cliff and just shoot from the bottom, and it just feels like real. It feels nice. You watch the Fablemans. There's like not a shot in that movie where it doesn't feel like I don't know what the easiest word. I just say logistically sound or something like that. It's just
Mm.
it's an incredible thing, but it's just amazing to me that this movie was not considered to be something and then ended up being like the biggest movie of the year. You know, got a whole bunch of Oscar nominations and turned out to be such a classic. And though it's not my favorite of the series, I still think Last Crusade is. It's still
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. This movie came out in the heat of summer. Actually, as of actually we are a week after this episode airs. This it came out June 12th, 1981. That would actually be a year before I was born, which is crazy to think about because, of course, Harrison Ford would do Blade Runner next year. It had the one thing that it had after all the the directing and all the stuff put together. John Williams came in to do the iconic score, as we learn later on. Everything was shot. It came out June 12th, 1981, and it was automatically a hit. It was automatically it garnered it was in the theaters for over a year. You know, it was one of those movies that just it kept going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. And I just it just amazes it still amazes me that the movie just does so much. You know, I always complain sometimes, you know this for a fact as well. I'll look at something. I'm not trying to bag on Disney because Disney now owns, Indiana Jones, stuff like that. But you look at something like The Little Mermaid, or you look at something like I don't know, something that's 3 hours long or whatever. You know, something that is super long and super boring, and you get these movies where the detail is just, it's like, what are you doing? And you're wasting my time, and you're not giving me enough information, or you're making me wait forever to get information. But here everything's so tightly compacted in an hour and 55 minutes, and I don't know like how you feel about that. But it, like, for instance, like the beginning, we meet Belloc, we meet the whole situation with the boulder and the idol trophy, and then we go into the quest that Indiana Jones is, and we learn all the information. But like going into that and learning about that kind of stuff and having it done so quickly but so professionally, like, what do you think about that? Because it's pretty impressive.
It is. Well, and I love it. And I love long movies if the story supports it. Right?
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
Want,
right.
I don't want a movie that just drags on. I mean, if a movie needs to be 90 minutes and that's all you need to really tell the tight story, then tell that tight story and do it. And we're good to go. Don't skip on me. Don't make me think that we've left out chapters where I'm just like, what happened to this person, or how did we get here?
Right.
But yeah, I think this is great with how they write that, because like take Belloc, for example. You said, we introduce him and then we don't see him again until much later in the film. But we already know that he's kind of the bad guy. He's not necessarily the bad guy, but he's certainly not just, yay, my friend. And so, that context in very short at the beginning, I mean, very short, is set up for us. So when we meet him again, first off, it's not a surprise. And now we expect him to be the bad guy. And so, when you have something like that, when you set up your characters to be this way, cool, we're good to go. And I think the efficiency of which they told the story is outstanding. And, and to introduce Indiana in the way that they do right off the bat, I mean, we know nothing about him. You wouldn't know that he was a professor at the very beginning, at the very start of the movie. And then it pieces it back together some. And I think, I love the way that this story is told, because it it's mirrored almost in Last Crusade, where he, you have bad guys searching for something. The expert who knew where that was, either can't be located, is dead, missing, whatever that is. And so now Indiana is brought in to try and help put that puzzle together. And, both times you get to meet kind of the bad guy at the beginning, not necessarily sure he's going to be the whole bad guy, but
that's the funny part is a lot of movies, like, a lot of superhero movies and stuff like that, they need to like reintroduce the origin story. But this is the new IP, or at least it was new IP at the time. Now there's like 5 films, but at the time it was a new IP. It was a story of an archaeologist who, the idea of the archaeologist who's a teacher is a cool concept, even though it's the most outlandish thing you could ever imagine. There's like, can you imagine how much I don't know if you know any teachers or substitute teachers, but how much money those substitute teachers are making off Indiana Jones's like field trips and stuff, like it's insane. But I love the whole like college stuff that happens in the movie, but it's so funny. Like I think this one with the eyelids.
Yeah, love you, and just the extended blinks and all of the girls just fawning over him, and so funny.
Yeah, man, it's so funny. It's but that's the thing. Like, you know, you get the whole segment with like William Hootkins, and the other guy is also pretty famous. I can't remember his name is, but and they go into detail. I mean, we all know what the Ark of the Covenant is. It's one of those lessons you're taught if you're, you know, went to school or went to church or just learning through history. The Ark of the Covenant's a pretty well known thing, which makes this movie very digestible and relatable, and a lot of times very easy to work with, because you have this device, this MacGuffin, and you're able to explain it with ease. You don't have to go into too much detail. You know that this contains like the books of what I like, you know, I'm not too religious, but it contains the books of, it's very important in the history of, you know, Christianity and Catholicism and stuff like that. And I love the way Indiana Jones has to explain it to these guys like they're children, but he's also explaining it to the audience like we're children. But we have to understand, like, this thing is important. Yes, it's like the idea of the Ark of the Covenant is in this essence is a little too easily found, but just the nature of, like, you know, getting to the story is what makes it work, and getting to Mary and stuff like that. But I love the explanation, the exposition, because exposition can be a little too over the top. It can be a little too monologue-y, and here it's done perfectly. And that's thanks to the script scene of Lawrence Kasdan and George Lucas and the crew. So it's I wish I could go into the brain of people like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and just see how they do this kind of stuff, because I know people that work in the industry. I know people that are but they don't have this. I'm not trying to discount them. They have the talent, but this is like the stuff we're seeing in this movie and the stuff is being produced. The talent is such a like a whole different level that it's crazy.
It's why you have you have a bunch of good directors, but you don't have a bunch of just outstanding, excellent, top tier directors. You take something to push through that, and you know, a handful of them have. So it's
it's crazy. It's still interesting to see how somebody can go from making Jurassic Park in the summer to making Schindler's List in the same year and just create, like, you know, wondrous films. And actually, that's the other thing. Jurassic Park in the next couple of weeks is gonna be 30 years old. That one, if you want to make you feel old. So
dude, that's uncool.
I know. I saw that. I remember seeing that movie in the theater, like when I was a young kid, and now I'm like, it's crazy stuff. But the main thrust of the story, as we learned, is Indy is basically hired, or he's given a lot of money. He's given a lot of money to recover the Ark of the Covenant before the Nazis are. And the Nazis, of course, they play a big role in at least 3 of these films. I know Dial of Destiny, I believe, deals with Nazism with Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah,
if I've seen right in the trailers. And basically they have uncovered the location. I think they've uncovered the location where the Ark could be, or where it most likely is. But they need the medallion that, of course, Marion Ravenwood has, who's played by Karen Allen. So he has to travel to a remote village in the middle of, like, God knows where. I can't remember offhand. I'm really bad,
or something like that. I think.
Is that what it is?
Something like that. Yeah, it's way out there.
Right. Yeah, it's like as remote as you can be. It's almost like she was put into hiding so that the Nazis couldn't find the medallion, but the Nazis have, like, all the money in the world, because this is in the 1940s, and, you know, Hitler's at the highest powers. And of course, as we know, occultism and stuff like that is very big, and Nazism and stuff like that. But another stroke of genius casting, Karen Allen is, you know, you would think, you know, having the woman in distress, or something like that, the woman in distress would be, you know, not as powerful or as strong-willed as we see. And this is the great thing about George Lucas is, and, you know, his storytelling is, you look at Star Wars, you look at American Graffiti, you look at any of these movies, the woman is actually more strong-willed than the guy in a lot of
Oh
times.
yeah.
Like the character, like Mary Ravenwood, like stands her ground against Indiana Jones. I mean, they have a history together, but it's like it's almost like almost kind of funny to watch how she just puts him in his place through this entire movie. And it's great when you first see him, she punches him in the face, but she somehow has a love for him and stuff like that. It's great stuff. But I don't know, you know, she's a drinker, she's able to take on Indiana Jones, she's a fighter.
Well,
She
and think
yeah,
about like the drinking scene. Okay, so when we
yeah,
first see her, she's having a drinking contest with some big
right,
burly Mongol, and then later when she's drinking with Belloc, see, it's already set it up for us, so we know. Oh, there's no way that she's drunk. She's just playing drunk, you know,
yeah,
and, or even if she is drunk, we know she can hold her own.
right.
I love those ties that they put in, just to quickly move us through these parts of the story. So you don't have to explain this, you know, we've
Right,
already seen it.
right. Yeah, it's great. She is able to be witty with her dialogue. She's able to be snappy.
Mhm.
Like I said, she explains that her father has died, who was, you know, friends with and Indiana Jones seems to have friends in like low places as well as
Yeah.
like crazy places, and they all seem to be dead by the by the time that he gets to them and stuff like that. But it's
Yeah.
you know, it's nice to have those contexts. But this leads to Ronald Lacey's character, who plays Arnold Todd, and he of course is the Gestapo guy with the hat. You know, probably one of the great villains in modern movie history. And I mean, what do you think about his character? Because it's great, because he's like that slimy, he's like a very slimy character, but he's very menacing. I mean, you could like Belloc and the other, you know, Nazi generals and stuff like that we see in the movie, but I think he's like one of the great villains of, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, he emanates that presence. You said menacing. I mean, that's really what it was. And I
Yeah.
remember even as a kid being like slightly like, I don't like you, because you know they've dressed him all in his black SS uniform. He's got that giant
Yeah.
black leather coat and the whole thing, and he wears the fedora, right? I mean, he doesn't, and it's just, yeah, he's not okay. But I love every time he steps in, he's slimy and he's overbearing, and he brings this confidence with him
Mhm.
because he's like, you get this sense that he's done really, really bad things in his past, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so he's not afraid to do them again if necessary. And oh,
Right. Yeah, because the funny part is he's always there, even though most of the time he's in the background. So
mhm.
this is like the only time you really get like him in like a true action sequence, because most of the time he's just kind of there,
Yeah.
but you're always afraid of him. Like he like the ones that are mostly quiet are the ones you're most afraid of, as you're
Mhm.
aware when it comes to
Yeah.
like action villains and stuff. So this is when we get the first action sequence, which is great because it has, you know, people being thrown into fires and people being shot in the head, which is really creative. I think Todd is actually, I think his name Todd, I think that's how you pronounce it. He does the Marv thing from Home Alone, where he sticks his hand to get the
Yeah.
medallion. He has to go out in the snow.
Yeah.
um
Well, and it's funny how they add in just a little bit of slapstick humor to this
mhm,
to probably tone it down just a little bit, you know, some of
mhm.
that peril and some of that fear, which then helped keep it at that PG level, because then it's, you know, it's okay, it is scary, but look, there
Yeah,
was a
yeah, yeah,
consequence to it and he had to run out, and that's funny, and he, you know, you know, steams his hand that way. So
yeah.
yeah, but I mean, the
It's
bar scene with the, you know, the whiskey and the whole thing. I mean, it's all, yeah. The timing of it is so
mhm,
much fun because it's high paced or fast paced and just high
yeah.
energy. And yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. And just all the shooting. I'm not sure how everybody survived. Well, especially like Indiana, but you know, whatever.
Right, right. Well, that's the thing. Like the way this is shot, the way it's edited, the way it's put together, it's actually quite impressive. Like you just said, that that anybody survives, because of billions on like Indiana Jones survives fires like no other in this franchise. Like, you know, Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, when him and, you know, his father survived. It's
Yeah.
like
Dad, what?
he
So
blames
good.
the Nazis for the fire. Yeah, it's great
Yeah.
stuff. But that's what makes this movie so perfect. And like I said, my problems are just like the way it is a little too easy when it comes to like how quickly he gets to things, but those are mostly nitpicks and stuff like that. But the funny thing is like the editing style of this movie is very much an 80s 70s editing style where it'll do the 10 minutes or 5 minute sequence and then it'll quickly cut to the next sequence. You know, a lot of movies today will linger and then kind of focus into the next sequence and stuff like that. Is a little more focus that's put into movies than it was. It felt like they were more like on the fly editing type of thing because there's not computers. Back in the day, they're doing it reel to reel. I mean, there's great things with Walter Murch and Thelma Shoemaker that talk about like how hard it was to edit. And as the age of like computer technology came along, they were able to like, you know, quickly, or they work quickly, but they were able to focus the shots down. So there's almost like a renegade style to the editing in this movie. And then on top of that, it's sequenced with the famous you know, map sequence when the plane flying over the map and stuff like that, which I think is one of my favorite things ever in a film. But yeah, it's just there's like a confidence in the way they edit it, and they know as long as the movie is shot specifically and what they need to do, how they angle it, and how it's the editing will come naturally. And as long as they, you know, Spielberg puts faith in his editor and stuff like that, or his cinematographer, it'll work itself out. It does it like fantastically. But they end up in Cairo. Is it Cairo they end up in?
Where when they meet Salah. Yeah,
Cairo.
I think it is Cairo. Yeah.
And this is probably like a half hour's worth of movie right here. This is a pretty huge amount of stuff because Salah, of course, John Rhys-Davies is fantastic. I love John Rhys-Davies. I think he's great as, you know, Gimli and stuff like that, and he's great here. And this is where
sorry.
No. That's one of my favorite moments in The Last Crusade is like, I asked for horses, not camels.
Oh gosh. Yeah, but he is a classic character.
Right. The thing that as you mentioned that's great is the bad guys are always like near Indy at some point. They're always trying to, you know, take him down, stuff like that. But what was the movie? I just watched a movie recently. It was Fast 10, and then of course you watch Shoot 'Em Up. The funny thing that Shoot 'Em Up does, and have you ever seen this movie, Shoot 'Em Up with Paul Giamatti and Clive Owen? It's the one where
I haven't.
Oh, you should watch it. It's hilarious. It's great. But the point is, like, it makes fun of villains and how they seem to always be there where the hero is. Like Paul Giamatti just shows up randomly out everywhere. And it's great stuff. But what I like here is the Nazis and Belloc and all these people. They have people that they hire to try to kill Indiana Jones and to try to steal the medallion and to try and, you know, kidnap. At some point, Marion Ravenwood's got to be kidnapped or whatever to have Indy continue his mission or whatever. But I like that idea. I like the idea with the dates. I like the idea with the soldiers fighting, like the Cairo people from Cairo and the swords and stuff like that. And I gotta ask you that question too. Like, you know, a lot of movies will have, like I said, the villain just be there at that moment. Here it's like they've hired people and it's actually smartly thought out. And what do you think about that as well?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's so many movies where it's just this massive plot convenience where villain just, I know where they're going to be. Cool. Okay. You know, and some of it, sometimes that's a huge bother. Sometimes you just, whatever. Okay. I'm just going to go with it because yes, you know, but in this, yeah, I like it because it's almost kind of like, I think back to like some of the Pink Panther movies, you know, where, the one in particular, is it Return or Strikes Again? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But all of these assassins are after Clouseau. And so you have just all of these people converging. And I like that in this because it adds another layer of fun to it because we don't necessarily know yet who all the bad guys are and who he's going to encounter, you know, or if she runs by somebody and all of a sudden they're part of it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't know that. That was cool. You know, and so it allows Marion to then get into things and us, you know, her just, it makes sense when she gets kidnapped or when she's taken because at that point, we didn't see everybody at first of where all the, you know, all the moving pieces were. So I love it when they include all the henchmen, you know, whether they're hired
Right.
hands or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, because as we're both aware, the one of the most famous sequences in movie history, it was an improv scene. Harrison Ford was super sick, and it's the point where Indiana Jones and Marion are being chased because they want the medallion, and Marion's been kidnapped. He's trying to go after Marion because she's in that basket now, and they're going to put her in a truck to take her away. But we get the sequence where the guy with the large sheath sword or whatever it is just doing his moves. It's like he's doing his moves, doing whatever. And that's the kind of stuff that I love, is when somebody is able to improvise. And Harrison Ford goes, I don't know if I can do the whipping stuff right now with his whip, which is his iconic thing. And he's like, can I just do this? And of course, as we know, he just pulls up the gun and shoots the guy. It's like the most ruthless thing. It's almost like he was like, they were leaning into like the Han Solo thing with like shooting Greedo or something like that. It's so messed up. It's so great. Like everybody, I'm sure, was cheering when they saw that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's surprising, right? And his look of that, just that. What in the world are you? Okay, and on you go. It's like, okay.
Well, that's the great thing, is like it shows you that he's been through this for so many missions and so many things. He's just like, I don't want to deal with this right now. I have to save my woman. I have to keep the Nazis from finding the Ark and unleashing evil upon the world, which is what they've been trying to do all this time. Can you just go away, or I'm just going to shoot you? And he just shoots him. It's so great, right? He's like, yeah, I'm off. I'm out.
Well, and I think I read something about that guy, that guy had been like, they had sought him out, and then he had been training and practicing for quite some time to then just be shot. And like he was less than happy because he didn't really get to show off like all of the rest of his skill.
Oh my god!
Well,
but you're iconic now. That's right. That's oh my god, it's hilarious. But like this whole thing, just this whole action sequence, once again, like the bar scene and the later on action sequence, like, yes, Indiana Jones didn't really have to be there. Yes, they were, but it makes it more impactful because it's fun, it's thrilling. Indiana Jones is getting his ass kicked, and he's still finding a way to get through it. But it also leaves that moment where it pulls the what was really bad, and like I think Rise of Skywalker, where they try to make you think Chewbacca was, spoiler, they try to make you think Chewbacca was killed. But here it's like, it's emotionally impactful because the chemistry between, I'm sure you see it too, the chemistry between Karen Allen and Harrison Ford is well done. It feels like they have history together. Yeah. So when he thinks that she's died, like he's sitting there drinking, it's like, I get it. That there's some thing in the back of your mind that she's not dead, but it's just like, it's really well structured in that sense, I guess you could say. So yeah,
their chemistry has to work, even though they're antagonistic, right, towards each other. It has to work, otherwise we don't care if she gets kidnapped, and so there is that connection that's built, even though it's very brief, and you get to see those looks in their eyes. And you're right, I mean, we've been told there's some kind of history there, but we don't know exactly what it was. But yeah, I like them together. I think they work well.
And like I said, it's helped with the action sequence and stuff like that being tightly put together. And of course, the Sala is he is. That's the great thing of Indiana having connections, is he's able to get information from Sala, who's like a connection for him in Cairo and stuff like that. And I think I was so glad when they brought him back for Last Crusade. It was nice. It was nice to see him come back. I kind of wish he was in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but whatever. Well, that movie sucks.
True.
No, it's not. Yeah. But of course, the date sequence happens with the monkey. The monkey's like a big proponent, and like he ends up eating the date, and he ends up dying. And there's that whole sequence where they're realizing that he has the actual medallion, and he keeps trying to eat the date, but he gets distracted.
That tension there that's built because we're like,
and then Sala saves him, right. But it leads to, of course, I don't know if this is still in Cairo or it's outside Cairo in Egypt. I don't know. The only thing that I was confused about, I don't know if you were confused, maybe you know it better than I do, is the sequence with the camp where they're trying to find the Ark. Is that still in Egypt, or is that did they travel somewhere else? Because it's not really
I,
explained.
I thought that was still someplace in Egypt. Yeah, but I don't remember where, if it actually even said specifically. I'm sure they said something with the in one of the interactions where like
Yeah.
Salah knew where Belloc was, where they were digging, but
Okay.
yeah,
It's because yeah, I think you're right when you think about it, because I don't think Salo would travel that far with Indy. Um, it's just I'm kind of curious. I never can find information about it. Why George Lucas and his crew decided to set the Ark in Egypt? I know Egypt is always like Israel and all the other countries I can't think off the top of my head as places where the Ark could be, because they have temples all over the place that say the Ark's there. But I'm always curious of why they felt Egypt was a good place to have the Ark of the Covenant, because it's such a fascinating object and very important to religion and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't like I said, I couldn't find anything on it. I don't know the idea. I don't know if it's just because this is where they could find, they had the budget, and this is where they had the ability to shoot from, and they're like, you know what, Egypt, sure, we'll put the Ark, the MacGuffin there, but I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, and it could be because, I mean, even at this point, Egyptology was huge in the early 80s. I mean, it was, they were just beginning to really start to uncover a lot of the artifacts and find a lot of the tombs. And
Yeah,
so maybe it just lent itself easily into that, so that it was kind of in the zeitgeist just of knowledge, or at
right.
least awareness maybe. And then it provides, because if people kind of know about it, it provides the opportunity then that, oh, well, see, it's not that far fetched that a temple would be hidden under the sand after 1,000 years. And so then
Yeah, that's
that
true.
provides us, I don't know, I mean,
No, I mean like I said, I didn't know the answer to that question. That would make sense if Egyptology and stuff like that was coming around the 80s. It would make sense that they, it's like when Jurassic Park came out and they were using like Utah and stuff like that as places you find bones and stuff like that.
mhm,
It makes a lot of sense, if you think about it. But like this whole sequence is just it's fun to watch, because it's just, even though once again it's unrealistic that the Nazis are that stupid that they wouldn't notice, Indy taking a bunch of their workers, and yeah, I mean,
right. And they're right up on
they
the
get
hill. I mean, you can't see.
right. I mean, there's a point where Indy and Sala almost get caught. This, Sala like falls down the sand dune and stuff like that. He uses the
Yeah,
Nazi flag, which is great, but like at some point the Nazis got to be looking up there and like they're not going to look down the hole that somebody could be down right now. That maybe Indiana Jones is down there. Especially when they're high alert because they know Indiana Jones is not dead at this point.
yeah,
So I don't know. It's one of those weird things. I look past it because the movie's so good. But
yeah.
oh no, what's also great is when they finally find the location after he's used the stick and the medallion to find out he's what's also a great kind of thing that they put in there that they didn't have to put in there is Indiana Jones measuring the location with the tape. He has a
Mhm.
little finder piece, to find the dial and stuff like that. And those things are throughout this movie, but you look at something like Mission Impossible and the technology that they use, the stuff placed there, they don't have to put it in there. They don't have to have him
Mhm.
using tape. He could just have psychic abilities or whatever, like they claim to do
Yeah.
in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And here they're like, no, we're going to show you the tape. No, that he measures exactly the distance he needs. He's going to write in the book. He's going to do what an archaeologist does.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. That is thinking in a sense that no, a good director and a cinematographer and writer know to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, the movies, I don't know if you've seen movies that like this is kind of stuff is based off of, but they're more just action films than they are like logical thinking films and
Sure.
stuff. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
this movie isn't action oriented, but it takes that extra step, which is kind of
Mhm.
nice, which unfortunately the later movies don't do. So that's why this movie works as well as it does. But the other thing that makes me laugh is when they finally find the location of the Ark of the Covenant's at, they're climbing, they're digging up on the hill, which is very suspect. And Indy takes off his robes. And you see him in like, which is like one of my favorite shots. It's kind of like the Star Wars shot where it's the
Mm.
shadow of him and
Yeah.
he has his like whip and hat on. It's like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. It was more
It's
for
funny.
it was more for the visual than the realism.
Yeah.
At that point.
It's like you know, when he walks in and he finds Marion and she's alive and he's happy, and you know, it's another comedic moment where he's like, I'm gonna tie you. Oh wait, maybe that'd be a bad thing. He just ties you back in. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, he's like, baby, I gotta do it. I'm sorry. Oh man.
Which
And
just makes her more mad, which is even funnier.
Right. Yeah, right. And of course, that's when she does the whole Bellic drinking thing, and it's so great. And of course, we get another famous sequence with they finally find the Ark, and they go down there, and it's the whole snakes. Why does it have to be snake spit? Many snakes, asps, and you know, rattlesnakes, and all those things. And it's great. It's like the rat sequence in Last Crusade, where it's great because you know, use the thing that Indiana Jones is most scared for, snakes. So, but what do you think about that kind of that sequence where they go down there, they find the Ark of the Covenant, the snakes, the idea of like, you know, what Marion is doing, like all of that stuff leading up to the eventual like plane sequence that we eventually get to. And
yeah, there's questions that I have about the believability of how these snakes have just been surviving all this time. Whatever. You know, we
whatever.
just you go with it, right?
Yeah.
But no, it's great. I mean, because that's another thing that, you know, when you have those giant statues, like when Marion is dropped down in there, after they've, you know, taken the Ark. You know, he's on the statue of Anubis or whatever that was, and he's trying to, you know, shake it down. And I mean, you have to, I think there's definitely some believability that you kind of have to just kick off to the side, because Indiana Jones and Sala are able to lift that monster size, you know, stone case or lid. And it's not just a lid though, because when you see it, it has those things that go down, you know, on the sides of it. And so they have to clear it to get it over. And it's just, you're like, okay, sure, whatever. We'll go with that again. And
like later on, they're like the thing's being lifted with a crane from the submarine. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but I like the idea that Indiana Jones has respect for this Ark. He knows that it's very dangerous, and he plays it off like it's very dangerous, and he also plays off like this is one of the most important discoveries in the history of man. And he knows, but like as we see throughout the movies, it's very important to him, and that's why his character is so important to the story. Is the Nazis wanted for the occultism and stuff like that. They wanted to basically garner power of like invincibility in a lot of respects, and that's why he's so determined to go after it, you know, as we see. And I think what's great about it is, even though they're trapped down here, he's always looking for something to either help him escape or a way to get out. He's never not just kind of giving up. And you know, Marion's like at this point the damsel in distress, even though she's a very strong-willed woman, and he's able to find the way to get out, but he has to do it with like his most fear, which, you know, one of my biggest fears is roller coasters, and I don't get on roller coasters, and he's like battling snakes that could kill him in a second. And it's just, I don't know, that whole sequence, man.
Oh, it's crazy. Well, and I guess you could get away with it because they don't show it, but they don't show the snakes actually catching on fire. But it is, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, in today's standards, would they even be able to do that part of it? You know, because you hear kind of the screeching of the animals, but it's such a great scene. I mean, and him just, you know, trying to, you know, put fire on them and keep the torches by them, and it's going out, which is adding that urgency to it. We know the Nazis are getting away. I mean, everything is just on this massive compressed timeline. And you know, as the lights are going out, well, that you're really gonna die then if you don't get out. So.
right. Yeah, it's great, because like any one of us would be like, oh, all right, cool, snake, you know, bite me, I'm done, I'm not I'm never gonna find a way out of here.
Exactly.
And he's like using the whip to pull down the Anubis statue, and it, you know, works it just well enough to hit the side where they can escape, like the Goonies did and stuff like that. And yeah, it's fantastic. I don't know if you noticed like the way this movie is paced and how quickly it moves. There is literally like 35 minutes left in this movie by the time they get out of the room. There's not very much time left. Like the point after Yeah, the point where actually it may be like 40 minutes, but anyways, the point where he's holding the rocket launcher. There's like 18 minutes in the movie. Yeah, the credit sequences are different back in the 80s than they are now, with the 35 minutes of credit sequence. So, but yeah, they're like, that's how, like when you're watching the movie, you're not even thinking about it. Like Back to the Future, like the sequence, like when it gets to the car, traveling down the road to go 88 miles an hour to go back to the future, there's only like 15, it's like probably 12, 13 minutes left in that movie, and that's with credits. It's just that's, to me, is a perfectly paced movie where you can only have 30 minutes left. You can have this, you have all this information you have to put out there, and it doesn't feel like it's being abused and used. It's incredible stuff. And you still have like the plane sequence with the big buff guy, which is amazing, incredible stuff. I don't know if have you ever been to Disney World?
No.
Okay. They have the Indiana Jones Spectacular, the Stomp Spectacular, where they show like the boulder sequence and they show the Cairo market and then they show the plane thing.
Ooh.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean it's definitely showing its age, but it's a pretty cool little thing if you've never seen it. But that plane sequence is why this movie works as well as it does, and why it's so iconic, because it's violent, it does show blood, but it's not like gruesome. It's like you don't see the guy getting hit, you just see the blood afterwards. Marion gets stuck in the plane. They're trying to escape, and in the process, you have the Nazis trying to get away, trying to get the Covenant away, and there's just this fight on a plane that's moving around, and then the gasoline spilling all over the place, and it's heading towards the fire. And it's only like a 5-minute sequence, but it's like you're on the edge of your seat, and there's not many movies that do that.
We just came from a scene that we were on the edge of our seat also. Yeah. I mean, it's just like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Like, I love it. It's funny because like he's getting punched and he's getting bruised and he gets knocked to the ground. And of course he gets knocked to the ground when the guy gets destroyed by the helicopter or the plane blade. And it's perfectly paced. This is what makes good filmmaking is just the idea of just like a intense sequence that is this is a very simple sequence. It just two guys fighting with a plane moving around that's going to explode, a woman in danger. There's nothing like that. I mean, very few directors can do that, and it's really impressive. But they're able to escape, and that leads to the chase sequence, which is another hallmark of the Indiana Jones franchise, where especially in Last Crusade, and even to an extent in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I'm pretty sure you've seen the trailer for Dial of Destiny, right? I'm assuming. Or have you seen?
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's a sequence in there that does the exact same thing, because I know James Mangold's trying to copy Spielberg a little bit. Yeah. But it's another like simple sequence of him just going after it, but it's filled with like great moments of him fighting a bunch of Nazis on the truck, him knocking, which is one of my favorite moments when when the bike sequence, which is also in the Indiana Jones movies, comes up to him and he's just like over and knocks the guy and knocks the funniest thing. One of the funniest things in this movie is the car that comes up next to him, and he's just trying to knock it over. And somehow, at some point, there's a cliff.
Yeah.
And he knocks the guy over the cliff. I'm like, where's that cliff come from?
Well,
like, it makes no sense, but it's hilarious. Yeah, the cliff just happens to be there. It's just like that sequence in Blues Brothers where the Nazi guys are driving. All of a sudden they drive off the bridge, but they're falling like from a skyscraper. They're falling. It's like, it makes no sense, but it's like you have to
yeah. I'll go with it. I give you an applause for that. That's good.
Yeah, cool. Sure. They're dead. Oh, awesome. It's so funny. But that's why, Indy's able to escape with the Ark. And of course, the bad guys are going to have a way. This is probably the one part that maybe a little weird to me, but they load the Ark onto a ship. We see the power of the Ark with the rat and stuff like that. And Indy, of course, I think it's Kanaga or Katanaga or whatever, who runs the ship.
Yeah, Katanga.
Katanga, yeah. Which is let me check. I always got to check who these people are. George Harris, I know that guy.
He's in Harry Potter. I was watching that and I'm like, dude, I know that voice and I know that face. Why do I know that? And so I had to look him up, and then it was like, oh, It is him. It's the dude that pairs up with he's Kingsley. He pairs up with
Yeah,
Lupin.
yeah.
And yeah, oh
Right.
gosh, so good. Like, yeah, just another one, kind of like Alfred Molina, where you're like, oh, wait, I didn't no idea who you were before. Now I do, and that's kind of cool.
Right. It's so great. But they're on the ship, and the only part that maybe a little too convenient is they were able to find, I don't know how, what did they put a tracking device on the ship? I mean, it just was there a stowaway that gave away their position? With the Nazis, including Belloc and the main SS captain and stuff like that, they're able to find the ship and of course take Marion hostage again. Did that bother you at all? I mean, did that give a little bit of like reality away?
Yeah, I mean, more so not them necessarily finding the ship, because if they're already paying off, we've already seen them pay off a whole bunch of people in towns and cities. Maybe there was somebody at the dock just that saw it and they made the call, whatever.
Sure,
able to look at that. It's the Harrison Ford jumping off the ship and swimming across the bit of ocean there. I mean, it's not overly far, but I mean it's a distance, and then get onto the sub, but then get into the sub. It's
well, yeah, that actually, I was thinking that same thing when I was watching this movie. And so one thing that's always bothered me is like, you hear the horn, every time, I'm assuming when a ship starts to dive, there is sirens or horns that will tell you that it's diving to keep everybody in check, and you hear that. So I'm assuming that they went underwater, but then they show the map and they show the island that they go to where the eventual conclusion of it happens, and the ship is above water. So I don't know,
maybe they maybe
it didn't, or if it did dive, like where the hell did Indiana Jones go? Like, I mean, clearly if he like the porthole thing that they opened to walk out, I'm assuming they locked that thing. So did he go in? Like, I mean, where did they put the Ark of the Covenant too? That's the other thing you gotta wonder. Like, is there room in the ship or in the sub for the Ark of the Covenant?
That's a good
that's why I think maybe
I hadn't thought about
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're probably.
Yeah, and that once again, I forgive it because the movie's already thrilling and exhilarating. If this were a movie that was terrible, it didn't make any sense, like it has been before, and they did this kind of stuff, I wouldn't forgive it as much. But it's so well put together. It's still a fun sequence. I think Belloc as a villain is an interesting one because he's very layered. He's a guy that actually has a little bit of a conscience, as we see. He's a guy that knows Indy's very much wanting to see what will happen. And unlike the SS agents in Todd, he's a guy that could turn against, because he didn't want to throw Marion down the shaft of into the snake pit or whatever. And then he's like, whatever, I have to do what they say. But I almost feels like there is a little bit of a conundrum or a feeling of maybe he's a little not despondent, but a little guilty, I guess. I'm not too much, but there's a little bit of guilt there. And,
that he could possibly have a redemption arc. Maybe.
Yeah. Of course, as we know.
No.
But no. But they go to this island. This is where they're gonna check out the Ark of the Covenant. I like that Indy knocks out a guy and the suit's the jacket's too small for him. It's like I don't know if you're aware if this happens to you, but the stuff that you used to be able to wear when you're younger, let's say you try to wear that size today, and this is especially for me because I'm a large man. It's almost embarrassing when you get a shirt that you used to be able to wear and you try to put it on, you're like, maybe not. It's like, come on, man.
Skinny suit. Nope. Still not working. Yeah. No, I get it.
It's like Steve Martin in Father of the Bride or something like that. And then he just knocks out another guy.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
But of course, it leads to the rocket launcher sequence, which is Belloc finally is like, you can blow it up, but I know you're curious, so you might as well just come with us. We'll tie you to a pole and we'll see how this works out. But I also wonder if they actually gave Marion shoes, because she wasn't wearing any shoes on the ship. So I can imagine she's walking through the gravel I don't know. That's kind of stuff I noticed. Like, I hope they gave her some shoes, because I'm pretty sure it's not very much fun to walk.
Yeah, no, that would be terrible.
Yeah. But once again, there's only 10 minutes of this movie left, and then we go to another famous sequence where it's a sequence that is more on entertainment than it is on like what the actual Ark of the Covenant really does. It's you have to like throw out like logic and understanding and reasoning, because in this universe the Ark of the Covenant features poltergeist ghost, and I love that Indy is so he's so respectful of the Ark of the Covenant that he kind of knows something's not going to go well, because they like you see it throughout the movie is foreshadowing with the way the clouds and the thunderstorms roll in, the way everything starts to feel off every time you're around the Ark of the Covenant. So even though if you don't understand, you kind of get that he knows that maybe you should respect it and not look at it. Maybe there's a reason that it's been hidden for so many years. And he tells Marion, of course, close her eyes. And as we see, we get the famous sequence of the ghosts come out. And like I said, I'm pretty sure these were very similar effects to like poltergeist and stuff like that, where they use like they'll have like a person that they film, and they kind of they put it into the frame, and they kind of expose it over and over and over. It's a visual effects shot that you see in like Ghostbusters, stuff like that. And we get the famous sequence of the melting faces, the exploding man. Belloc explodes, yelling and screaming, and they're all sucked into the into the Ark of the Covenant forever to be tortured or whatever. It's never fully explained, but I mean, I'm pretty sure you're with me, and it's probably one of the great what the hell did I just watch moments.
As a kid, that was horrifying and awesome all at the same time. I mean, come on, we're watching these people just melt. I mean, who came up with that idea? That's the other thing, that it was like, we want them to melt. We don't want them to catch fire necessarily right off the bat. We want them to just liquefy, and it looks great. I mean, even today, the effects, I mean, they're dated. Yes, they're aged.
Yeah. Well, of course.
But but you wouldn't look at it and go, wow, that is terrible effects. You look at it and go, that's not bad. I'm okay with looking at that.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at something like Jurassic Park. Yes, they use visual technology, but you've seen it a million times before, like I have today, where it's just like there's so much. I think that the simple fact there's so much effort and like sweat and tears. But I'm not saying the visual artists, because they're overworked and they're underpaid, and they're the Marvel Disney machine is just like, it's whatever it is, and that's why the visual effects. But you watch that. I don't know if you watched that ILM doc that was on Disney Plus, but it's a really good doc. It just talks about like the way ILM became what they were. But there's so much effort and love and heart and creative. They have to be creative, because the stuff they're doing, you look at Star Wars, the stuff that they were doing, it never been done before. Like, yes, you had like the Ray Harryhausen stuff, but the way they had to be creative, and it actually talks about Indiana Jones in this doc from ILM. Like, you have to have people who can really work on the fly, who can create unique stuff, who can be go beyond the just norm of creating. They have to be used to what's that word? They have to be innovative. I guess it's the easiest way to put it. They just have that's why people like Dennis Muren and John Knoll and all those people came out of what they did. And I don't know if you saw Mad God with
Phil Tippett's thing.
Phil Tippett. It's just these people, that's the reason they're so well respected, because they had to come up with stuff to be creative, because the budget for this movie is only $20 million, which yes is a lot of money for 1980, but it's it's not like today where you have all these visual effects artists who were able to pull from stuff on the fly. And now with like the way AI technology is coming into effect and everything that's working, they have easy, it's not easy, but they have an easier route to go than the guys back in the day who were literally just creating stuff out of their imagination and stuff like that. It's so impressive. And it once again, like, you look at Back to the Future, you look at Star Wars and Ghostbusters, and that's why these movies are looked highly upon and stuff like that. And it leads to probably one of the great endings where he wanted it in a museum to be studied, but the government was like, we'll just put it in a warehouse and we'll maybe reference it in Kingdom of Chris. Important men. And it's just being which has been what's that word called? It's been like in Family Guy and stuff like that, where they like mimic it or whatever. And it's just one guy pushing it down a long row of like Area 51 stuff and all the stuff the government's trying to hide from you. And that's the great thing about this movie is Indiana Jones is this individual who believes in stuff being studied and history and how the world works, having to go on these adventures to recover the stuff from the bad guys. And the people who hire him in the government, it's like, okay, we'll stick it, in section C over, 41. And yeah, that's the end of it. And you can just go off on your day and we'll be oogled by, college chicks and stuff like that. And that's what makes the movie so brilliant, is just like, in the end, it almost seemed like it didn't even matter, like everything he did is just for naught. And he has Marion and stuff like that for now, but just the overarching, just the look on his face when he's just like, I don't know why I even try. I don't even know why I try. And it's brilliant stuff. So yeah, and then of course comes out with the music and the credits, and as most of those movies did, it focuses on the shot for a long period of time. And yeah,
dude, that score throughout the movie is so good. I mean, the Indiana Jones theme is like interwoven through so many things, and it's always just popping up here and there. And the musical stings that they would put on things, I mean, it accentuates all of the action and all of the emotion as we go through. And it's just, I mean, that's why John Williams is John Williams. But
right. Well, that's the thing that I've always tried to tell people. I don't hate people for liking movies and liking just the big budget movies. It's just like, but the thing that people don't understand, the thing that always kind of makes me laugh, is the things that are most important are the things that are accentuating your senses, whether it be your eyes, your ears, if it's doing smell vision or something, like your whatever on that. But the things that are the most important are the writing, the cinematography, and the music. The mood of the movie is so important with how the director wants it. That's why you always see the director with the composer, because the music, think of Harry Potter, think of Superman, think of Indiana Jones, Star Wars, think of any Christopher Nolan film. Those movies have that mood and tone because of what the composer and the director have come up with when it comes to how they want to place this score here, how they want to place it here. The fact that the Indiana Jones score was two pieces of music put together, and it was able to craft it in such a way that it made it thrilling. They could have made it comedic by putting a comedic score in there and completely change the tone. And here, as we know, John Williams was able to perfectly match the action adventure sense with the score that he puts in. And not for the life of me, I don't know how they do it. I've listened to people like Michael Giacchino and John Williams and Thomas Newman. I love listening to all this stuff and like them try to explain like their thought process, where they're on the piano. Danny Elfman, they're on the piano just doing dun 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 dun, and it's just like, I could never do that. That's why, editing, I could never be a professional editor, because it's just, there's a level of like, of your brain, just how it works and how it processes everything, that I just don't get. And, that's why John Williams has been able to create some of the most iconic scores in history. And it's just, reasoning is just on a whole different level of like anything that I can ever imagine. And that's why, people have to be on a whole different level when they make movies like this, because, you can't just go in there and go. That's why it always makes me laugh when people get in arguments and stuff like that over like movies, and they yell at directors. We both, will criticize directors and stuff like that, but we have appreciation for what they do. And I try to be not too, unless it's something like, Slender Man or something like that, I try to not be too overly negative in the simple sense of like being super like screaming and blaming the director, because I know how hard it is. And that's what happened here. It's a very difficult movie. You can tell it was a very difficult movie to make. And, the blood, sweat, and tears is up on the screen. And the fact that it made $400 million worldwide and got all these Oscar nominations, it's the proof is in the pudding. And the senses on the screen of just how amazing this film it really is. Like I said, it's not my favorite in the franchise, because I just love the dynamic between Connery and Harrison Ford.
Exactly.
But Yeah. But I mean, with that said, like, I'll leave the floor up to you. Like, what else do you want to talk about with this film? Like, is there anything you wanted to bring up? Like I said at the beginning, I didn't bring up Denholm Elliott, who's in this movie, who's fantastic. I
Oh
think
my gosh, yeah.
did they did him a little wonky, and they made him a little stupid in Last Crusade.
Hmm.
But here he's like, he feels like a real person, and the
Yeah.
thing, he trusts Indy, he knows Indy. But like, I mean, I've been talking a lot, so is there, what else, is there anything else you want to talk about with this film that like really impresses you or doesn't impress you, or?
Probably, the one thing that always just stands out to me, and it's always just a little bit odd, is that over time, we had that shift where it's now known as Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where for so many years it was just Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I understand, because they want to do Indiana Jones and the Temple of
Yeah.
Doom, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal, but this is still Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is not called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
But I understand branding and stuff like that. But no, I mean, this is such a just a fun film. I mean, I remember, showing it to our kids the first time, and just, them, what's going on, and kind of getting excited about it. And then kind of, depending on, I don't even remember how old they were, maybe sometimes when it's a slower part, while I'm still excited and fully engaged, they're kind of like, and then back into it, for the action and just, that whole adventure type of thing. And I think that's what we have, a lot of action movies. I mean, throughout time, but have some that continually just bubble up and they stay at such an iconic level. I think it's outstanding. And think to Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile probably could not have existed if Raiders hadn't been there first. I'm not sure it would have worked as well. No.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at The Mummy. The Mummy's a perfect example.
Oh my
of
gosh,
a franchise that
yes.
could never happen without it. It's just, I'm so interested to see in another universe Tom Selleck do what that would be like. You always kind of wonder, like, I'm happy it isn't, but you kind of wonder how the way the film would have been felt if he had been the.
That would have been really interesting. Yeah, because I can't even picture him in it.
Right.
I mean, he's definitely got swagger, because we saw that in Magnum. I mean, he was, he had that little bit of laid back and everything else. I think it's just so hard now for me to even try and replace Harrison Ford with anybody, really.
Right. Yeah. I completely forgot about this, but the reason this movie partially exists is because Spielberg wanted to do a James Bond film, and the Broccoli family was like, no. I completely forgot that he wanted to do a James Bond film. And if you look at this film, it feels a little bit James Bondy in a lot of ways because of the central character who became iconic. He's kind of a devil. He's a little bit suave. He's a little bit gruff. He's a character that knows how to keep his own. He has a woman who is kind of the attractive young woman who kind of becomes his main focus. You have the over the top bad guys, which these are over the top crazy bad guys. They're they're accentuated Nazi bad guys. Of course, Belloc's French, but it is a little bit of James Bondy now that I think about it. But but like I said, I think James Bond's iconic, but I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is almost more iconic than James Bond in a lot of respects, just on the simple nature of like, it's able to take a genre that is well worn and able to do its own spin on it. That's why, like I said, Star Wars was able to take on that spacefaring adventure like the Buck Rogers and take its own spin on it. And well,
and unlike James Bond, who has had multiple people play that character and we all go with it, it just kind of okay, makes sense. To pass the torch and have another Indiana Jones, that would feel not right. I'm fine with another character coming in that has been introduced, that's been with him or something else, but to have a new actor play him, and I think maybe that's just because we've had kind of an old Indiana Jones the entire time. I mean, he's not that Harrison Ford was old, but he was not a young guy when this when this first came out.
That's the crazy thing. I think he was, when Star Wars came out, he was like 36 years old, if I remember right. I think he was almost 40. In this movie, he's like a year from being 40 years old, and I think that's impressive because a lot of people like a Chris Pratt or something like that, they're like, I think when he did, I don't know, Jurassic World or Guardians, I think he just turned 30 when he did those couple of films, and here we have a 40-year-old man who, to be fair, Harrison Ford has never been known to be able to run very well, and
No.
yeah, you can tell he's an out of breath type of guy who, gets beat up, and he's a very realistic character in that sense, where most of us would be tired of running, we'd be beat up, and he's able to take those lickings and keep on kicking. But I also looked up, apparently Sala was originally going to be Danny DeVito.
No.
Yeah, they were looking at Danny DeVito because the whole Danny DeVito was one of those actors that was looked upon as an up and coming actor, and that'd been very weird.
I could not imagine Danny DeVito doing a British or even Egyptian, Saudi, any type of that Middle Eastern type of accent, any of those, because he has kind of, I mean, I don't know, is it a New York accent? I don't know what he's got. It's very weird.
He's from
and
Jersey.
So, okay. Yeah. And so John Rhys-Davies, I mean, he already has that lint to his voice. And so it feels more natural. And so when he's in Egypt, we go, okay, yes, I go with that, and good casting call to not do him.
Right. I mean, when you think about movies like this, Sean Young was always considered for a role in these types of films. And I think what it boiled down to is like a lot of movies, especially this day and age, they look at like the same actors over and over and over. I mean, think about, one of your favorite actors, Idris Elba, how many times he's been looked at for a part, and that type of thing. So I get it. I think, and Danny DeVito looks like a guy from Jersey. That's why he works so well in The Penguin, as a Penguin, or It's Always Sunny.
Yeah. You're right. He's very American, and Northeast.
That's why American. Right. That's why he works so well in Romancing the Stone. But but yeah, like I said, the movie made a lot of money, became iconic, cemented Harrison Ford in 2 major starring roles, even though he didn't want to be in either of them after. It's amazing. Like, I don't know. Okay, from at this point, I think I gotta ask you if you could rank we haven't seen Dial of Destiny at this point. We won't have seen it when this post. But where would you rank the 4 films? Like, where would you put them?
I would do, at the bottom would be Crystal Skull, and then I would go Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade.
Oh, you're a big fan of Temple of Doom, huh?
I didn't used to be. But about, I would say it's probably been like 20 something years ago. I used to watch it a lot, and it was one of those movies that grew on me even more every time I watched it. Like, I would find different pieces that stood out to me or that made me laugh. I mean, the whole them in the short round in Indiana, in the room, they're locked in there, and Kate Capshaw's character is coming down, and she's freaking out because of the bugs and everything else, and that interaction that's going on through a wall. I mean, it just, all of these things, it makes me laugh a lot. But I think canonically, or at least in like chronological order, Temple comes first, right? And then Raiders, then Last Crusade. And so, I don't know. Yeah. What about you? How would you rank them?
I would, it would be Last Crusade, just because I think Last Crusade is completely underrated. I don't know why I think it's just a simple fact that it doesn't have as many laugh out loud moments as Raiders of the Lost Ark does. But it would go, Last Crusade, Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Crystal Skull. And there's a lot of revisionist theory going on right now with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because I've seen it's similar to like the prequel series of the Star Wars franchise, where people seem to love that movie more and more. I'll tell you why and what I think it is. I think it has to do with kids who grew up with that film and those films are now like in their 20s and almost 30s. Because if you think about it, Revenge of the Sith is like 20 years old, I think.
Oh
In
yeah.
2015. This year was Attack of the Clones. No, last year was Attack of the Clones 20th anniversary, and we've hit the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. But I think that's the reason there's a lot of revisionist history going on, and people love that film. I don't get it. I think there's a lot of lazy filmmaking in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull that I don't understand of what Spielberg was thinking, but it was just a little. I think what my worry with Dial of Destiny is that it's maybe a little too long a wait. It's too late, and I worry that movie is going to have that problem where it feels like they're trying to mimic, but they're not trying to be their own thing. Which is my worry. And also, I hate to say this, but I said this in my Mission Impossible review. I'm not a huge fan of David Koepp, who is the guy known for writing stuff like Spider-Man, and he did do Stir of Echoes, but he also wrote Mission Impossible. He's a co-writer of Mission Impossible. He wrote Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He's a co-writer on Dial of Destiny, and he's a writer who I appreciate for the simple fact that he was able to be successful, but his scripting is very. You hear me say this a lot because I really focus. I really love reading scripting and stuff like that. The way, if you watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the pacing of that movie is solely focused on just like weird moments that are interjected with like really offbeat stereotype stupid things. I don't know. I didn't know you at the time when I found Frank Darabont's script to Kingdom of the it was actually called something of the Saucermen or whatever, but Frank Darabont wrote a draft. He wrote a draft of the fourth movie, and it has like an aerial battle sequence. It has all these great sequences. It actually has the ant sequence in it, and it's so much more put together. It feels more like a 40s 50s like serial movie. And whatever they did with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and like I said, I have someone coming to talk about that, but what they did with that, it just baffles me. And I think what they did with like Last Crusade is much more on point than
Well, and I think too that even as outrageous as Temple of Doom gets with the whole putting the hand through the chest, and pulling out the heart. Okay. That's a little, I don't know how much I believe in that, you know what I mean? But
right.
Everything else is pretty well grounded. I mean, it's that sounds weird to say. I mean, it's not necessarily even plausible, but just that it's there, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel so out there. But then when you get to Crystal Skull, it just feels like, well, we went off the rails here. What was going on? That we took this big step away from something that was at least historically grounded. You know what I mean? That there's historical records of these things. Yeah. And then we go here. Honestly, when I saw Crystal Skull at a screening, and I've never seen it since.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I would have to. I don't want to rewatch it. That's the thing. Like I loved the ant scene. That was fun. That was
and it's funny because that's a Frank Darabont sequence. So that's why it's good. You know, when the guy gets eaten by the ants and stuff like that. But like I said, go back and watch it. There are parts in there that are fun. It has Ian Holm, the guy that was the guy that got his chest burster, the chest burster guy. Yeah. He's Bilbo in that also. But he was the Ollivander in Harry Potter. But with that said, Raiders of the Lost Ark, getting back on track. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a fantastic film. Everybody's seen it at this point. Everybody knows it. If you haven't seen it, I don't know how you've not seen it, but find the time to see it. Yeah, especially if you're going to see Dial of Destiny, kind of catch up on the films. But with that said, I think we'll end it there. We've been talking for quite a while, but Chris, once again, I appreciate you coming on to talk about this movie. It's been a lot of fun. I always look forward, we talk a lot, so I always look forward to talking to you about movies and stuff like that. But absolutely, as I always do, to end these out, you have a lot of content. You have a pretty awesome channel. You're doing very well with the channel, which is awesome. I always love seeing people succeed. But if anybody doesn't know, where can they find your stuff at?
YouTube, Movies and Munchies. So movie reviews, TV reviews, occasional snack reviews. When I come across something either good or disgusting, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's the best place to find me. I'm on Twitter, but I suck at Twitter, and I have an Instagram, which I'm not even on. So there you go. Yeah.
yeah, I know that feeling. So a lot of my reviews, I just like auto post it later on. So
there you go.
But with that said, once again, this will be a series, so I will do week by week up to leading up to Dial of Destiny, talking each individual movie. The next one was supposed to have a different person, but it's going to have someone else that you guys will know from people I've talked to in the past. But for me, I'm on Movie Emporium. That's where this video posts. Of course, you know, videos, reviews, all that good stuff. Look forward, like I said, I just posted my first Mission Impossible review with Trip from Trivial Theater. And yeah, that'll do it. So we're going to head out. And thank you for watching. And we'll see you on the next review. So once again, thanks to Chris, and we'll see you guys later. Peace out, guys.